Hello and welcome to News Up Now. I'm Gleitson Martins. Today I'm talking about immigration here in San Francisco and all the states, and also what the federal laws will affect the California laws. So here to answer these questions and other questions that has been sent to us via our viewers is the immigration attorney Gabe Espinosa. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's go through. Before I go through the viewers' questions, I just want to touch base with you on some general information just to make it a little bit easier for our viewers who are watching or listening to us. So I know California is known for having some of the strongest immigrations protections in the country. But that being said, President Donald Trump has set some precedent, has set some new laws and new enforcements, and I want to know how much of on the federal level laws regarding immigration will affect California residents.
That is a great question. So, answer that, I'll start by reminding everybody that California has multiple sanctuary cities and, in general, is known as a sanctuary in general state because so many cities are sanctuary cities. But how that interacts with federal law, as you said, is that in a nutshell, what that means is that federal law enforcement has the right to execute their functions but the state cannot interfere. However, the catch-all and how the protections come in play is that the states do not have the obligation to help, aid, cooperate with them. So as long as the states do not interfere with federal law enforcement duties, the states do not have to help them. So, for example, how this would apply, let's say a hospital, right? We have agents who oftentimes what we're seeing, and what I'm seeing as a legal expert, is that the agents usually don't have a judicial warrant. So to get into the buildings, certain buildings, they don't have the warrants necessary to do certain searches. Then the workers don't have the right to disclose the names of the people they're looking for.
To me, it seems like, let's say I have a court day to go in, let's say I'm going to go in, I'm just making that up, next Wednesday, and I'm hearing a lot of people are not going because they're afraid of it.
Yeah, that is happening and has been happening. Not so much anymore as it was, I would say, a year ago, but it's still, to your point, it is happening. So that's a catch-all 22, and that's in a sense that if people don't go to their scheduled court hearings, then they could be removed by what's called by absentia, meaning by absence. So by not showing up, they can be removed. But if they go, they're, like you said,
It's a
risk of being detained. I would say caveat the primary targets for the government have been people who have been in the country less than 2 years and who have entered without inspection, meaning without documentation. Those were the main demographics that they were targeting. However, because in law there's always a loophole. Habeas corpus is a defense that has traditionally been used in criminal defense, but in this context, it's helping people have their due process because it's forcing the government to say, hey, we are asking for our due process, which by the way, everyone in the country has the right to due process, to have their process, immigrant, citizen, everyone. So that's what's helping people get out of detention.
Well, let's go to some of the questions from our viewers.
Yeah.
So one, we got a couple questions which is similar, so we just filtered this. I've been in the country for 5 years. Can I still apply for asylum?
5 years. So I guess
Not a lot of details here.
Right. So let me break down the 1 year bar first of all. So with asylum, it does require that the person generally within a year of entering the U.S. apply for asylum. While it's not impossible to overcome that if you don't apply within the 1 year, it is a lot harder, but it's not impossible. There would have to be evidence of hardship. Oftentimes medical are the ones that do get the exception. I would say medical, maybe psychological circumstances. I've seen clients where they were scammed, where they had a notary public claim to be a lawyer and they relied on that. And so we've been able to convince the judge with that evidence. But it is harder. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Yeah. It's harder. But 5 years, it would be harder. We would have to show that there would be an exception.
Another question is, and let me get to it because we got this via WhatsApp.
Hmm.
So I got my green card through marriage and has been declined for a couple of times. I've done everything they ask for bank statements, insurance, uh, conforming both names are, real. They ask for pictures. Sorry, I'm just translating on the spot
Hmm.
here.
Hmm.
And everything they asked, if the marriage was legally, it was real.
Yeah.
So we proved everything. So what is the next step? Because they keep saying no to us.
What have been in the question? Did the viewer state the primary reason for the denials? Like, is there a theme of what they're saying in the denials?
That I don't know. That's what they said. It's, I know it's kind of vague,
Yeah.
but from what I understood here, like they whatever the office asked them, like photos, bank
Yeah,
statements.
they're called bona fides. That's what they call the government calls bona fides. So, based on what you're telling me, that is telling me that the government does not believe that the couple is in a bona fide, quote, real marriage for whatever reason.
Huh.
So, I would go into that, first of all, and asking if they haven't already, the officer or the adjudicating office, one, why are you denying it when I've proven that I have been? And if it's still being denied, I would also look into potentially internal recourse, meaning find out who the supervisor is for that office. Sometimes those officers, unfortunately, I see it with asylum law too, are not exercising their discretion and their adjudication duties correctly. So that could, depending on, like you said, it's vague, but depending on the circumstances, if there's reason to believe maybe the officer's being biased, unreasonable, escalating to the supervisor of the office
Hmm.
could
Hmm.
potentially help. And if in a extreme scenario, perhaps filing some type of lawsuit with a Ninth Circuit or just a
Right.
higher court. Sometimes it's harder, but it can happen sometimes to compel maybe discovery or what's going on. Basically, that would be the the last resource there. But I would say start internally. Why is the officer ask? Why are you denying it? What is it that you don't find to be genuine? And then going from there. But definitely speak with your lawyer about that because your lawyer should be guiding you as to the proper way to respond to those because they also do have very strict timelines in which to respond.
From what we're seeing everywhere when the ICE officers are on the streets, regardless where they are, if it, this is my observation, if those officers are not following the law, therefore, if they see somebody with a gun, I mean, they can care less about that person. I'm sorry to say that way, but that's what I'm seeing out there.
That's a fair point, and that goes to what I'm saying about just because you're following the law or a person protesters following the law does not mean that the officer will. And that's a great point to make to the audience is again, it goes back to reading the room and things that will try to help prevent escalation. I know people are, the public is mad. I understand. But again, put yourself in situations that don't risk your safety.
So, at the federal level, what percent immigration policy changes are having the biggest impact on immigrations here in the state?
I would say definitely the immigration court process. I'm seeing that a lot of cases are being pushed back a lot. I don't know if you're aware, but especially San Francisco, I believe, is the largest immigration court in terms of judges who have been fired. So I would say that process is what has been my experience been the most impacted, and primarily those types of cases are asylum. So there's two types of asylums, just to break it down to the public. There's affirmative asylum for those who come in with a valid visa at the time of entry. So they get folks who do that process are able to be interviewed at USCIS and not in an immigration court setting. If people come in without inspection, without documents, then that is in the immigration court setting and what is referred to as defensive asylum because you're essentially defending yourself with asylum from removal.
Okay.
But I would say that has been the most disrupted
Okay.
because of the Trump administration.
So let's talk about answer another question from one of our viewers. Sam is asking, I got my driver license in San Jose, just an hour from San Francisco. I pay my taxes, but I have been paid under the table. can I renew my driver license?
Well, always work with your account. Always, and we always have to report. If even if you get paid under the table, you do have to account for that.
Mm-hmm.
So work with your accountant on the best way. That would probably be. It sounds like a 1099. I'm not a tax expert. Just
Yeah.
caveat. I'm a lawyer, not a tax expert. But work with your accountant to make sure that you account for that, so that the government can't later say, so and so did not pay their taxes and use that as an excuse. Because to your point, and this is a great segue, is people at sometimes at the interviews, immigration interviews with USCIS, like your marriage, green cards, your US citizenship, for as simple things, depending on the office, as maybe tax evasion or old. That's why it's so important to have a good lawyer
Yeah,
to
yeah,
help
yeah.
you, but being detained at the interviews because of things like this.
Yeah, but isn't the president, maybe I'm reading this wrong, but saying undocumented people cannot get their driver license anymore?
That still hasn't. So there's still, at least in California, people are still able to get the
Okay,
non-real ID.
okay,
But I guess now the concern, right, is because of the heavy immigration enforcement, is that
yeah,
that's
yeah.
going to essentially out the person as being undocumented because they lack the seal for the real ID. So there is some concern from the immigrant community that that is going to make it easier, perhaps, for ICE to try to detain me.
Thank you for that.
My
Thank you so
pleasure.
much, Gabe Espinosa, immigration attorney here in San Francisco. How people can contact you if we.
Thank you. So follow us on Instagram at Espinosa Ramos Law, Espinosa Ramos Law, and it has all my contact info on there, EspinosaRamosLaw.com. We do provide free consultations, and we also handle employment cases because we're seeing a lot of an uprise in the immigrant community being exploited by employers who think that because of the immigration enforcement that they can get away with breaking the law, but they still have to follow the
A lot
law.
of excuses.
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
take advantage of some certain situations. Yeah.
So
Thanks so much, Gabe.
my pleasure.
I
My
appreciate it.
pleasure. Thank you.